Mike Gervais, welcome to the Way of Champions. Jerry and I are absolutely honored to have you on.
I feel the same. It's a great way to start. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
We've had a back and forth, I think, over the last couple of years trying to do something, and it just never worked out. But I think the timing couldn't be better now with your book, The First Rule of Mastery. Absolutely fantastic. Mine's all marked up and dog-eared and everything. I know Jerry's is as well. And so I don't think a bio much is needed here. I guess like my question for you is what got you interested in mastery in the first part? It's the name of your podcast, this book. Why mastery?
Well, okay, so it's a cool question. No one's ever asked me that, and so I'll start with that. Okay, so I think the easiest way to answer this would be that the concept of high performance falls short for me. And so if you think about like almost like a stack rank, there's choking, there's micro choking, there's performing under pressure, there's high performance, and then it just felt like that's not enough. It's not rich enough. And so the concept of mastery always felt rich and deep and exploratory, and there's a bit of a frontier, and there's a bit of being at home with yourself. So it's like pushing at the edge, but at the same time being at home with yourself, even in consequential or rugged environments. But that sense that there's a richer component towards understanding oneself and understanding one's capabilities through mastery of craft. And so that's probably it's the first time I've answered that question, but that's why I would say I'm more interested in mastery than quote unquote something a step below it, which would be high performance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I mean, I think it's really interesting, and I think it's a word that's thrown around a lot. But like, yeah, what does that mean, and what does high performance mean? And this is what I think Jerry and we've had a couple conversations about the book of like these interesting topics that we want to explore. But I think this whole idea that if the first rule is stop worrying about what other people think of you, when you went into this, when you recorded your first podcast, when you explored it, did you think that would be the first rule?
No, not at all. And actually, I think with greater clarity, the first rule is to work from the inside out.
Yeah.
And it's a byproduct when you do that you stop worrying about the noise, which is, one of the greatest bits of noise that we have in our life is what they might think of us. And the book was a bit of a investigation about like what is actually happening from a mechanical standpoint, from a psychological and emotional standpoint. What is actually happening when we're attending to the noise of what people might think of us, their opinions. And so, no, I think the first rule is not stop worrying. The first rule is to work from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And then stop worrying is what eventually takes place.
Mm-hmm.
Stopping worrying is eventually what takes place.
Yeah. And this shift, like we now live in this world where everyone gets to give you their opinion, right? And, everyone gets to tell you what they think of you via Facebook and Instagram and Twitter or whatever we're calling it these days. It's harder. And for the professional athlete, the pressure is so crazy. But even for anyone, right? How many likes did I get on my Instagram page? I have teenage kids, right? It's like, it's this massive outside pressure where everyone gets to have an opinion. I mean, like Jerry and I had a long talk on here with Steve Kerr talking about NBA locker rooms where at halftime people are on Twitter seeing what they said about their performance. And it's like it's just such a different world than maybe it was 20 years ago or when I was growing up 30, 40 years ago.
I think the mechanics are different. No, I'm sorry. The scale is different,
Yeah.
but the mechanics are the same, meaning that, we use the word public figure in a different way than we used to 20 years ago. 20 years ago, a public figure, like, oh, okay, well, they had a hit record, they had something, like there was something noticeable. that had world recognition from it. However, you and I were public figures in that we knew probably, more than 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had whether it was our neighborhood or our workforce or whatever, we had a public experience. And it was just a little bit more intimate. Now that public nature, if you've got 150 followers or 150,000 or 1.5 million, it's just, there's an extrapolation that's taken place where we don't necessarily know the person that's commenting on us. But we've always had this public figure feeling when we walked into a holiday party, and there was a public nature to that, even though they're all our friends.
Mm-hmm.
So the mechanics don't change, but the way that it's magnified has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to point to what is actually happening. Why are we so attuned to what they might be thinking of us? Come to find out, it's an ancient process. It's very old. We've got this ancient brain in modern times, as you guys talk about as well. And so that idea that if somebody were to reject us, or even the slightest hint of rejection, it was a near-death sentence 200,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's still, like, that mechanism is so radically powerful for survival. It's still with us, and it's just showing up on social media, but it's still showing up in public speaking. It's showing up in raising your hand in boardrooms, or fill in the blank, wherever, even in social settings, like I said, like a holiday party. So it's an old mechanism that's in there, and it's a survival mechanism. And I just wanted to highlight what I think has been one of the great constrictors of my life, and come to find out, one of the great constrictors of so many people's lives is, like, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to let people down. I don't want to look bad. I don't want to. That idea, it's in the eyes of others that we're not good enough, is a pretty massive constrictor of what we're capable of.
Yeah. And Jerry, I want you to jump in here, but I just, as you're saying that, Michael, I think about the advice that I always try to give others, be it my kids or friends, and yet oftentimes struggle with to take myself, which is Dr. Seuss, that the people who mind don't matter, and the people who matter don't mind. So there you go.
Good. Yeah,
Jerry,
it's so good.
Jerry, go ahead.
Oh gosh, where do I start? This is amazing. I'm really excited about being here with you, Mike. And I read the book thoroughly, and I mean, there's so much in there to unpack. I mean, it's simply written, which is beautiful for a lot of people, but it's very powerful. There's a lot in there.
That means a lot coming from you, Jerry.
No, seriously. I wasn't trying to
Yeah.
think of something I could say to you that would make you feel good. Of course it makes you feel good. It makes me feel good, but we'll dive into that comment in a few minutes. But so I got taken off guard here because you started mentioning social media.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we have Facebook, and we have Twitter, and we have all of these things. And, it appears that for many people, it's really about wanting others to approve of you, have their best opinion. How many likes do you get on that? It's all about counting up likes. Many display what they do. I've seen this happen with people that I know intimately. They're projecting an image on Facebook. That's an image, a persona that they want you to think about them and form an opinion based on those photos. Look at us. Aren't we cool? Aren't we doing this? Aren't we doing that? And so when I think about that, I was saying, well, when I talk with Mike, I just have to ask him what he thinks about something such as Facebook or Instagram or any of these things. Well, what is your take on that?
Well, one is, like, it's a tool, just like everything else. Money's a tool, like it's a tool, and it can use you or you can use it. If it's the way that I've seen the most successful people use it is that it's a way to share ideas, it's a way to gather ideas, but it's not a mechanism to see if I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we start to get in trouble, is that when it becomes an externalized operation to see if you're okay. If you externalize your sense of self, or your self-worth or confidence or self-esteem, to the public opinion of others, then it becomes very dangerous. And it's so cunning. It is so slippery because it's an instant feedback. Like, I said this and they like that. I posted this and they like that. They must like me.
Mm-hmm.
And which is not actually how it works, right? And so, but it's the maladaptive component to it is born out of a wanting for more, a wanting to be part of something, a wanting to know if you're okay. And when you externalize that sense, it is a very slippery slope. And it's, like I said, it's cunning and it's slippery and it's dangerous in a lot of ways. The people that use it in the most dynamic way is that they've got an idea that they think has been important for them, or they were inspired by it and they share it, or they have something that they want to say, and they send it out. And it's not checking to see if people liked it or not. It's checking to see if it's not checking at all. It's a mechanism to send it. And then when you do check, it's because you've been asking your community questions. What do you think about this? Are you investing here, here, here? What are the ways that you found to be successful raising your kids? Let's say and you give some forced choices. So it's a gathering information and sharing information, but not meant to be a way to build confidence, worth, esteem.
Mm-hmm. Can I just take off on that, John? So my wife Jan, she's a physician, a doctor, and I walked into her office the other day for the first time in a long time, and I'm looking at the wall, and she has all these calligraphy sayings on the wall, quotes for her patients to entertain themselves while they're sitting there. And this one quote just jumped off the page and jumped off the wall and hit me between the eyes. And the quote was, "Be yourself. Others will get used to it."
So
Imagine,
good.
right?
Imagine that. That's so good. Yeah.
And then of course, the Webster's dictionary has now defined authenticity as the word of the year. Every year they come up with a word, right? So this year, 2023, they've already decided that authenticity is the word of the year. So it's getting a lot of press. It's getting a lot of hits on from leadership to teaching to whatever. But that quote, just like, that's got to fit into your way of thinking, doesn't it? Be yourself. Others will get used to it.
It reminds me of a story. I did some work. Microsoft is our largest client, and helping 200,000 people become their very best, to have a growth mindset. So their culture is all about growth mindset.
Right.
And to have a growth mindset, the proposition that we've built with Microsoft, from their senior leadership all the way through, is you want to have a growth mindset, you got to invest in some psychological skills so that you can be about it. As soon as you feel pressure or stress or fatigue, do you have something that you can rest on, which are mental skills, psychological skills to be able to navigate? And one of the core rocks, if you will, is a sense of who you are. And that's not a skill. It's a foundational component. So we're working with an executive leader at Microsoft, and we walked her through how to develop her personal philosophy, how to be clear on her purpose, and her core character strengths, that are her values that matter most to her. Those three components. So at the end, she was like, this is me. This feels so organic. This is totally what I'm about. I love this work. She says, I've got a problem. She pulled me aside. She says, I've got a problem though. I can't be this person here at work. I said, yeah, that's a problem. She goes, I've been doing it a different way for a long time. I'm really successful. I've been showing up. We all know about that two selves, or code shifting,
right.
as right. So I'm one way at work and I'm kicking ass. I'm another way at home, and that feels more organic to me. I don't think I can show up in the way that is honest and authentic and organic to me. And so it's a cool dilemma to have. Once you kind of wake up or have some awakening to your core values, your purpose, and your first principles, your personal philosophy, are you going to be about it in the places that you go, or are you going to do some other version of you that is maybe approved by others, and at some level successful. And it's just, I love that phrase. And it reminds me of her right now, like the courage it takes to work from clarity. It takes incredible courage once you're clear about what matters most to you. And I'm totally inspired by people that can do exactly what that phrase means.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wasn't that in Win Forever, Pete Carroll talks about that when he finally said, this is who I'm going to be. And I think he talked about like how he figured out that the Grateful Dead was going to be the Grateful Dead and not the second best version of someone else. Right. And, like this is what I think great coaches do. This is what Steve has told us. This is, when you find yourself, we had an amazing coach on, Jenny Levy, who's women's lacrosse at North Carolina. And she was working, started working with Jerry, but couldn't get over the hump of winning a national championship. And she told us the story. She went in to Roy Williams, who's won, a couple at that point. And she says, how do I get over the top? And he goes, you have to know what it's supposed to feel like, and you have to be able to sleep at night, and you have to be okay with doing that and maybe never winning. And that's it. And she said she left the office totally angry. Like, well, that's easy to say. You won 2 national championships, but she said, but that was it. Like it has to feel right to me every single day. And I'm okay with not winning at all. And and then since then she's won 3 and been to 12 Final Fours.
Yeah. How about that? Nice work.
Yeah.
Nice work, Jerry. Yeah. I think though that working from the inside out, which is what I'm calling the first rule of mastery, and to do the work that you guys are talking about, is so special. It's so rare. It is so powerful that you do end up finding, the favorable in the win column, most likely. There's no guarantees. There's no clear path on how this works. But it is so rare, special, and powerful that when people capture that and they can do it at some level of scale, meaning, yes, the coach has made the fundamental commitment, and at least I think 1 out of 5 of the coaches or players, at least 1 out of 5 have done it, and maybe there's a glow 2 out of 5. If you got 3 out of 5, it's like, wow, like golden. We're really in a position of leverage. So it's just rare to make that type of fundamental commitment, and when people do it, it's pretty rad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But all the great ones do it. And people say, well, that's easy for them because they're great. Or no, they're great because they're being that, not doing it. Right. They're being it. And regardless of what position they find themselves in, whether it's a Pete Carroll or a Steve Kerr, regardless, they're being great in the moment by having the courage to be who they are.
That's right. And it does not need to be coaches. It can be, the Jerry Lynch and the John Sullivan. It's like you just got to, it is the being you. And this is where it gets really tricky, is that, so let's just create a scenario. And let's just say a server at a restaurant, you've got a nice night out, a server at a restaurant comes over and they're rude and the order is wrong and it's late, it's sloppy, it's cold. And it's a bit of a disaster of service. And do you bite your tongue because you want to work from kindness? Or do you want to work from honesty? And do you tell them exactly your experience? And so it's like, it's knowing your core values. It's very important to understand your core values. And then putting it and it being able to express those, sometimes they're at odds and compromise with other ones. So when we talk about authenticity, it's like, well, it's being authentic. Well, yeah, but like you missed kindness in there. Like you said it, you're a bit rude, you're a bit aggressive. You had your back or you had somebody else's back. Yeah. But so that's where it gets really tricky. And the people that can be completely fluid or fluent in the language of authenticity and the language of values expressed, and they've got the mental skills to back it up, those are the ones that I'm like, okay, you're onto something now. You're really onto it.
Yeah. Well, let's neutralize the duality. You can be, on the one hand, I'm going to be kind. And I'm not going to be truthful to my truth about how I'm feeling right now at the moment. I mean, I'm getting engaged here to this lovely woman, and you're bringing me a dinner like this, right? Like I am pissed. And so we can neutralize that duality. I don't see it as an either or. I'm wondering if you just said something really, I can't think of the way you said it, but it had to do with language or communication.
Yeah, but if we're fluent in the expression of our values, our
Right.
virtues.
So I'm
Yeah.
interpreting that, and correct me, please. I'm not familiar with that expression, but I see being fluid as being kind simultaneously with being truthful. So
Okay, so that's like graduate school.
yeah, I
So
want to go
the
to graduate
beginnings
school.
is like that's graduate school. That's
Yeah.
fluent. Like you can at the highest level, like if we study any of the Zen traditions, which I know you have, is that the duality becomes problematic, right? And so that's the graduate level. Underneath of it, though, it's like, well, which version of myself do I present? We're talking about authenticity, right? Like,
Yeah.
which part of me do I bring forward? And if it's not a graduate level, they can feel like they're in competition. Like, do I say the thing, and even if it comes out edgy and I'm being honest, or is there a more graceful way that I can say the thing? To your point, that takes practice and time. And I'm perfectly cool with when people are aware that they're still rough on the edges, or they're still trying to work out how to square together 3, 4, 5 virtues in the same sentence, or the same expression. So
I see what you're saying. So yeah, it's a level of sophistication that I think is good for us to talk about here, because we want to educate all our listeners, because they see a lot of life, a lot of us who either or. And I want to be able to, Mike, you're going to come to my table. I want to be able to say to you, you know what, Mike, I can really see you doing the best you possibly can here, and I really appreciate you working with us and so forth. But I got to be honest, I'm just not feeling good about the way this came out, and I'm wondering if you could help me with that. And it's being kind, but getting your point across. But really, I mean, my Brooklyn, it's my Brooklyn Dow,
Yeah,
right.
Brooklyn Dow. That's so good. What if the fiance says to you, Jerry, did you really need to say that though? Like, why don't you just let things go? Why don't you let things go? So there's another virtue at play.
Well, I wouldn't be with a woman like that. And so I need to be with.
Fit. Yeah,
right. It's not a good fit, because if she's going to do that,
that's so
well, maybe it's a first date, and then your point is well taken. But anyway,
So, that's fun. So, do both of you guys, do you see? So the book really highlights this idea of FOPO, fear of people's opinions, as being one of the great constrictors. Do you guys see yourself in that at all? I know you went through it and you earmarked it, but do you see, or have you graduated from FOPO? Like you just feel free from it?
I'll take
John,
that. I'll take that first.
I'll go after you.
Totally. And as I was reading it, I was thinking like back to, an athletic career, and I was a NCAA Division I athlete and a pro player for a little while. And it was like, I could see that, like how much, the approval of others mattered, how much the approval of my dad mattered. Right. So that goes back to the deepest essence of it. And then other things going on in my adult life with, I feel pressure, and Michael and Jerry and I have talked about this, right? So here I am, and what I do for a living is, I go and, try to help coaches be better coaches and parents be better parents for their kids in youth sports. Well, I have 2 kids of my own, what do people say about my kids? And is that a reflection of me, or that them living their journey? So I feel like I'm constantly fighting, let's call it the voice in your head going, what do people think about you, from a very young age? So 100%. I mean, that's why I think it resonated with me so much.
Yeah.
So let me take off on that too, John.
Jerry, I was just about to get a free session here. Come on, man.
Oh, my God.
No, go, Jerry.
Oh my God. I screwed it up.
So good.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Let's go, Jerry.
Oh my Lord.
Oh God.
Gosh. Oh, No, I think I grew up in a society where FOPO was really like how we operated, out of the fear of
It
how other
was.
people
Mhm.
would feel about us. And even into my young professional life, I did. But what I discovered early on, and this is interesting, I discovered that being me was a lot easier, and being me felt better. And but this is like 10 or 15 years into my profession. And then I started thinking, I came up with FAPO, FAPO. Forget about people's opinions. And right? I
Yeah,
know. You can use
yeah,
that. I don't care.
yeah,
But
right.
the thing is this. I've been striving, and I still to this day, and John knows this because we've had these conversations, I still work at that concept. And the way it shows up is I imagine so many people in front of groups of people, they have a mask on and they're trying to
Mhm.
project, his Dr. Lynch. He's published 17 books. He's got 128,000 championships. And all this stuff.
Mhm.
And I find that I can't connect with you when I'm trying to connect my professional head, Mike, with your professional head.
Yeah,
But
right.
if I can connect my human heart with your human heart, we have a greater connection. We go the distance together, and so much more takes place. Now, I discovered that concept 23 years ago. And so the last 23 years, I have been working diligently, for those of you listening, to remove that mask because I do care, but I want to be myself. And the only way to be myself is to be who I am. My reference point is, how am I with my kids? How am I with Jan? How am I with John? That's the way I need to be. I don't need to put that professional hat on. I need to go in there. If I sound silly, if I look silly, if I do something and I make a lot of mistakes, too bad. They don't like it. This is what they get. And I work vigilantly on that concept. And that's why when I read your book, oh my God, you're hitting it right
That's
on the
cool.
nose,
Oh,
And
that's cool. Yeah,
yeah, the
that's
whole
really cool.
mask idea, taking that mask off. The mask could be the lectern, in front of the group. I'm down in the audience. I'm down there with the people. We're sitting on the floor together, right, John? And
Yeah.
and there's a reason for that, because now we've removed all of that external stuff, and it helps me to stop worrying and thinking about what you think about me. And I say the heck with it. Forget about other
Forget
people's
about
opinion.
it. There
Forget
you
about
go.
forget
Yeah.
about it.
So I struggled with unmasking as opposed to the other analogy about armor. And so I'm pleased that you picked up on the unmask bit as the way that I broke out the chapters, because I was working with it feels like many of us have, or me, I should say, all this protective armor on. And we want the armor to look good. That's social media. That's presenting our highlight reels to the world. So we shine our armor. We oil that thing up. It's heavy now. It's heavy. There's a reason that we don't go to battle with armor anymore. It's Kevlar or something else, right? But it's so heavy to carry it around that I thought about putting the armor down, but I couldn't quite come up with a term for it. And so we did unmask as opposed to unarmor. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I think that we spend so much time getting our armor shiny and looking good and oiled up. And if we don't put in the work to look a certain way, it rusts, it looks shitty, it's heavy to carry around, and that is exhausting. Both are exhausting. So the next natural opportunity is for people to get out of the armor, take the mask off. But that is so terrifying. It sounds so easy. It sounds like, yeah, that's what I'm about. And
It's
oftentimes when I'll speak to audiences, I catch them, in this fun little way, as I'll say, how many of you want to have an amazing life? And I describe it like in an awesome way. And everybody raises their hand, of course. And then I'll say, like, you would recognize that means you got to really go for it, right? You gotta be true to yourself and really get on the edge and, take some risks and just really be about it. And they're like, yeah, 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 yeah. And, in a room of 1,000 people, 20 minutes later, I'll say, okay, who wants to come up here and see how their mind works under pressure? How many people do you think come up?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the true operating system is don't blow it.
Yeah.
Don't look bad. don't be rejected, don't get kicked out of the tribe. That's the fundamental operating system for most people. And then you get these rare wild ones that are they're either sociopaths, and they're trying to climb a social ladder and they don't really care, or they are completely narcissistic, or they are enlightened, or they're on the path of mastery. It's like one of those four. So if you're a narcissist, sociopath, or truly enlightened, this book is not for you. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you're fully committed to the path of mastery, those are the ones that go, oh yeah, like I want a chance of getting better. I don't care that people are here. Like I want to figure this out.
Yeah.
And that moment is fleeting, and it evaporates as soon as you sit on your hands or as soon as you raise your hand to get on stage.
Yeah.
But looking bad in front of other people is so problematic.
And you have, and I think you have this really interesting, I think it's a study that you cite with the three golfers, right? The pro golfer, the club pro, and the amateur of, trying to perform a putting task. And then when it becomes very public or whatever, the professional, I forget who it was, has the skill. Ricky Fowler has the skill set to deal with any pressure and still be very consistent and make 9 out of 10 putts, right? And the amateur doesn't care because he's like, I'm putting with Ricky Fowler. Who cares? But it's the club pro, right? Someone who has a little bit at stake if they look bad in front of other people, that struggles the worst. And I just think that's such a fascinating study that once we've invested a little bit, or we've labeled ourselves with something like the expert or someone who's supposed to have the answers, that's when we become most afraid of how we're going to look if we screw this up.
Oh, that's the performance-based identity. That was a study that I did with a colleague of mine, Dr. Sherlin.
Yeah.
And we did it at Red Bull with Ricky Fowler, who's a Red Bull sponsored athlete, and then the other two. And so that was the origins of like, what is this performance-based identity thing?
Yeah.
And that's the armor.
Yeah.
Right. Like when my identity is commingled and it's the fabric of who I am relative to how good I do something, relative to how well I do it next to you. So it's like, I am not who I am what I do relative to how well I do it next to you. And that's a performance-based identity. It makes perfect sense in our Western world because we are so obsessed with performance.
Yeah.
We are force ranked at a young age. We're, that's, we have a grading system that supports performance, and we're so performance obsessed. It makes perfect sense that we would develop identities in the West around how well we do something.
Yeah.
So one of the things, I'm sorry, John.
Yeah. I was just going to say, if I can, like, Jerry, if you don't mind, because I was reading this last night again, Michael, this part I had underlined, and I would like read it and I'd put it down and think about it, and read it and put it down and think about it.
Oh, fun.
Jerry, can I just read this like little line or a couple lines here?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Because this is on this whole thing, right? But when the core motivation of pursuing excellence is proving our self-worth, mistakes, failures, opinions, and criticism are experienced as threats rather than learning opportunities. When our self-worth and value are based on the results of performance, it's far easier to play it safe by not trying. If who we are is based on what we do, then doing becomes one of the greatest threats we face. We avoid situations we think we might fail. We lose the freedom to test ourselves and see what we're made of. Perfectionism is not driven by a healthy striving for excellence as much as is an effort to avoid the negative judgment of others and shame of not measuring up to our identity. We long for acceptance and belonging, but believe those needs can only be met if our performance meets or exceeds expectations. I mean, I read that over and thought, and because Jerry and I get questions all the time, well, my kid's a perfectionist, my kid can't stand losing, and everything like that. Like that paragraph right there sums it up, and it spoke to me thinking about my own life and a lot of things as well. So thank you for writing it.
Yeah, man.
But this is the performance-based identity right here.
Oh, did I just hear pain in your voice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's that coming from?
You're getting a session now, John.
I'm getting my session. I mean, it comes from a couple places. It comes from a place of, we could, go back to childhood stuff and seeking approval of a dad who didn't give it very easily. It comes from maybe, certainly when I started doing what I do now and doing more teaching and speaking, sitting there going, who am I to be given this talk? Who am I to be advising these people? So that fear of significance or whatever. So, I think it comes from that of like, oh, if, what if this blog post isn't good enough? What if I screw up the podcast? And so, again, it's something I'm aware of, but it's the two wolves on your shoulder, which one are you going to feed?
Isn't it the longing for I'll share a story about my dad in a minute, but it's a longing to know that I'm okay.
Yeah.
Just without having a dance monkey dance on stage, just like I'm okay. And I don't have to perform a certain way to be okay. I'm just okay. And like that longing, there's like this departure from that innocent version or that innocence of who we actually are at a young age. And there's this departure that I need to do or perform something for that part to be seen, but it actually never gets seen. And the returning to innocence is like this radical commitment. It's like I'll go back to graduate school. It's like the rite of passage is to work from the inside out. The rite of passage to adulthood is this fundamental commitment to know who you are and to work from that place. And then the graduate or wisdom level experience is like the full returning of innocence. I don't have to protect anything. I am completely here, and in that vulnerability, there's radical strength. And that to me is like, I see and feel your experience in this, and I go, me too. And that's why I had to take the time to write like what was actually happening, I think, from a science and a human standpoint. My dad at a young age innocently leaned over my shoulder one day and he said to his wife, my mom, says, well, hon, maybe he's just stupid. And I was in third grade. No shit. I went to the edges of like education and the edges of whatever to demonstrate to myself that I'm smart enough to have the approval. And guess what? Like, he kind of did it as a throwaway. Like he didn't really mean it, or if he did mean it, he was really sloppy, but like, so I don't know. Sometimes somebody tells us that we look bad in purple and it sticks with us. Sometimes someone says maybe he's stupid and it sticks with us. But this returning of innocence that I'm okay just being me. And I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to be, I'm trying to return home, if you will. So, John, I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Please from the front.
Yeah.
So let me just take us one step further. In this brilliant chapter, Identity, Breeding Ground for FOPO, right? You had a number of comments there that are really appropriate now that we need to take off on. And you talk about performance-based identity is it's not a definition of who you are. It's an expression of who you are. And that in itself we could spend about an hour on. But I really liked it when you took it from a performance-based identity to a purpose-based identity.
Yeah.
And the thing I really liked about that, Mike, is that it really taps into, like when I was talking about my process that's still going on, transitioning from going from I'm not good enough to I'm worthy. What I think is once I got in touch with my why, like, why am I still working? Why am I still at this? I could retire. I don't need the money. I'm not looking for accolades. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it because here's my purpose. I want to make a difference. And I want to be able to change the status quo so this could be a better world to live in and everyone can be a better version of themselves, right? That's my why. But what I've discovered with that is I can walk into a group of people and not think about what they think about me because I'm so in touch with my why. It's pure. My intention, my intention is so pure.
It can't be intellectual. It starts maybe intellectual, but that's a little bit like the Easter bunny, the chocolate Easter bunny, right? You poke it and there's nothing on the inside.
Yeah.
Like people can say my purpose is da 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 da,
Yeah.
But then when they walk on stage, which is one of the great fears for people,
Mhm.
and the most dangerous thing about public speaking is eyeballs.
Mhm.
There's usually no snipers in row 12. You know, it's like, it's the eyeballs, it's the opinions, is that it falls apart. That's so you can say, you can declare, you can do the intellectual work about my purpose is, but if you don't practice backing it and being about it and fully committed and having it be fully embodied like it is for you, Jerry, like it falls apart quickly, like quickly it gets undone
Yeah.
because this very specific mechanism in our brain, which is to belong, and is so powerful because belonging is safety. And our whole entire mechanism, our brain's mechanism, is to figure out how to be safe, to
Yeah.
belong,
Yeah.
to
We
be part
crave
of
that.
something.
We crave it.
Yeah, it was a near death sentence if we got kicked out of the tribe. If the three of us screwed up,
Yeah.
and the king of the tribe or whoever the council of the tribe says, you three knuckleheads, you blew it again, out of here.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much for us to forge and fend and hunt and gather. It's too much.
Or
So
I'm not a knucklehead. Or you know what? He's right. I'm a knucklehead. I mean, that's knowing yourself, because we all have our ups.
No. What I'm saying is, like, if we got kicked out because we were doing
Yeah.
our authentic version, or we weren't playing by the rules,
Yeah.
or we were pushing boundaries, or we were just total screw offs, that whatever the mechanism was, the council said, you three got to go.
Mm-hmm.
That was a near death sentence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we conform and contort and try to belong, and we play the secondary game, which is a safety game, not an authenticity game. And so the authenticity game is the first game.
Yeah.
The secondary game is belonging. And if we're playing that in the shadows, but we're presenting as if we're being authentic, the whole thing gets unearthed, and
Absolutely.
it's very, very confusing. And that's when when you can, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Jesus, Confucius, Buddha, Black Horse, you figure it out. Like, whoever's like the ones that you're like, they're special. When they walk into a room, they were about it. They were completely about it. That's the purpose. So if the on-ramp, if an on-ramp to FOPO was performance-based identity, I needed an off-ramp. And it was just its purpose. But it's not just the intellectual exercise. It's like really being about it.
So I think we're all looking for purpose. I think that's, we're striving for purpose and meaning in our life. And a lot of people don't have it. And, but I guess, can you say that if I find my purpose and my meaning in life, and I understand my why, that could be one of the ways in which we combat the FOPO experience?
Yes, 100%. I think that we're not looking for purpose. I think that is a luxury that some people do get to. And I think that what we're looking for is safety. And it's the safety, it's the belonging and acceptance that is biologically so foundational that it becomes kind of the main ruler, if you will, of decision making. It lines up our thoughts, words, and actions just to fit in, to belong. Now, when we have some basic mechanisms under place, and we've got food, shelter, and those types of things, we have a sense of esteem that we're like, no, I think I matter here now, and I feel like I've got some power that's not really being expressed properly, self-efficacy. I feel like I've got a sense of like I could do something. And then we're in that zone. It's like that's where we start to point to purpose. And now age can do something. Age, when we get older in age, and I'm starting to feel it more now than I ever have, I'm 52, is like, what have I done? What am I doing? Am I really spending my time properly? And Jared, I see the snicker, like, but like so the age does a thing where it starts to help shape purpose a little bit more. But I think what we really want is to know we're okay, the belonging, the acceptance, that bit. And then we muscle up performance and money and fame and social status and nice watches and cars to try to get to that core sense that I'm okay, which it's they're all false idols, of course. And then we can shortcut the whole thing and say, right, what is your purpose? Whether you're 20, 40, 80, what is your purpose? and make a fundamental commitment to that. And this is one of the reasons, Jerry and John, I love athletics, especially elite athletics, is not because it is beautiful to look at like a body in motion that can do something special. Like that's a art form that is captivating in a lot of ways, but that's just the sizzle. What I love about professional and elite athletics is the fundamental commitment they make to be their very best. And there's a hollowness to it because it's their very best, oftentimes in service of their fame, you know. And I'm mindful that I'm pointing to my colleagues and friends in the industry, like, you know, like it's not all about you, and that can be inflammatory in some respects. But the fundamental commitment they make every day to get to the edge, to get to the messy edge, to sort it out, to figure it out, to have public scrutiny, whether that is, you know, behind the velvet rope of coaches and or their peers, or in front of the velvet rope and, you know, social media and modern media or big media. It's like they get to the edge where they don't know how it's going to go. And for most people, that is so anxiety provoking that they go back to the center and they play it safe. But these extraordinary individuals are getting to the messy edge, even in public settings, and they're trusting that they'll figure it out on the fly. I love that. Like that, I love that. That is the mechanisms there are so rich for the good life outside of sport. And if you can take some of those mechanisms and put it in service of the purpose, Jerry, that we're talking about, I think we got something. I think that's how sport can be used well in modern times. Yes, it can be an escape. You know, yes, it can be fantasy land to not think about the things that are difficult to think about. But we don't want to spend too much time supporting fantasy. We don't want to spend too much time supporting escapism, you know, and celebrating narcissism. But if we can look right underneath the surface about how they organize their life, spend 8 hours a day trying to be their very best, trying to help others on their team be their very best. That's pretty radical.
Well, I think, you know, the advice I get parents who say, you know, my kid doesn't like to go to that edge, right? Or they get to that edge and they get so frustrated that they want to quit or whatever. What do I do? And my question a lot is find an athlete that they admire and find that biography, because everyone's been to that edge, right? Everyone's dealt with adversity, and actually adversity has a purpose. Adversity is the path. It's not something to be avoided. And the parental instinct to protect our kids clashes with growth and learning happens on the edge.
I think we got to tell them, John, I think we got to tell them, like, you got to model it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. Like, yeah, you know, do you get to the edge? Like, how are you modeling the edge, you know, with grace and uncertainty? And like, how are you doing it? And as adults, like, we don't get there as often as we probably would like to, you know, like we are great teachers to our kids, but I'm not sure. You know what I keep in mind, John? I don't know if you guys think this way, but like, I have one son, he's 15, and I want to be a model of what the good life looks like. I want him to love the idea of being an adult one day later, not now, be a kid, be all the things that is about being a kid. But like, when he thinks about being an adult, I hope that he's like, that looks good too now. When I'm at that age, that looks good too. So
there's a guy, Jerry, you remember a guy, we had a guy, I don't know if you've crossed paths with his work, a guy named Trevor Reagan. And he has a website, it's called the Learner Lab, and a podcast, and he does a lot of work in this area. And Trevor has this great activity. He calls it the Untalent Show. And I did this during COVID with the kids I was coaching, and I did it with the college teams that I was supporting. And so basically everyone picks something that they can't do, and then they have 2 weeks to work on it. And then on a Zoom, we'd all demonstrate it, right? So some people are trying to learn guitar. Some people are trying, you know, I learned, like, I never knew how to juggle or whatever, right? So you pick something you can't do and you try to learn it. And kids were like learning a trick on their skateboard or their bike, a card trick. And it was such a cool thing because we all got to see each other struggle and fail. But I thought, for me, the most important part as the coach, the quote sage on the stage, sometimes we forget what it's like to learn something new. And we're asking our kids or our athletes to do that every day.
So I love that.
The Untalent Show.
The Untalent Show. It's one of my favorite phases in a new team. So in the NFL, like the rookies come in and it's before the season starts and we're still forming culture and kind of laying down best practices, psychological, physical. It's like we're just kind of getting the culture reestablished. And because there is about a 60% turnover. This is where corporations are like, how do you do it? It's like, okay, well, there is a mechanism that I was fortunate to be part of. And one of my favorite moments, guys, is when the rookies have to get in front of their peers and they have to, it's the untalent show. It's not called that. It's called the talent show, but they've got to sing something or do something or, whatever. And it's the ones that are off key, slightly out of tune, just slightly offbeat, but fully committed to singing the Michael Jackson whatever or the Rihanna whatever, and like they're just but they're fully committed, and the rest of the room is like, I see you, like I see you going for it, like they all stand up when it's those moments. It's when it's polished and it's too slick and it's too good. It's like, oh, okay. Who do you think you are? But it's when you're in that, like that messy edge, as I talk about it, like I love the untalent version of you. That's fun.
It's awesome. Jerry, I know you have some thoughts here. You want to shift gears here for a bit, Jerry?
Oh, we can do that. Yeah. One of the things that I really was happy to see in the book, Mike, was that you address the concept of mindfulness right near the very end. And as we all know, mindfulness has become a household word to many. Back in the day when I started out, I was castigated for using the word, to say nothing about trying to train people in the techniques and the strategies. But today, a lot of people are comfortable with this. It's becoming really, really an important concept. And I'm wondering if you just talk about that in relation to this FOPO idea and the fear of other people's opinion, and how mindfulness can be actually a nice tool, a nice skill set to have going forward.
Yeah. Well, if we just for a moment use the word awareness instead of mindfulness, just for a moment.
I like that.
And and we just talked about like becoming more aware of what's happening inside of you and more aware about what's happening outside of you. And let's just imagine there was a set of practices that could help you be more aware, and more aware of how your thoughts and emotions work together, more aware of how the external triggers, or events in the world trigger something inside of you. And if you became more aware, you would move upstream, if you will, to downstream rapids. You move upstream to the waterfall that's, just below the rapids. And you end up living life differently when you are more sensitive and more aware. And I don't think that the world of mastery, I don't think the world of depth is available if you aren't doing something to increase awareness. And meditation, mindfulness practices, both Zen traditions and otherwise, are foundational. It's a way of being, and it's a skill, as you would recognize. And that's what's really confusing and clever about mindfulness, is that it's a way of being, and it's also a skill that you can develop. And if we thin slice a little bit, mindfulness and meditation, maybe it's as a way to think about meditation as a practice of becoming more aware, but mindfulness is the state of being aware. And I just don't think you're in the game of mastery. I don't think you're in the game of high performance if you're not practicing with some sort of fundamental commitment, the practice of becoming more aware. And you could put aware of what, in front of it. But like, if you want to be more authentic, and other people's opinions shape shift you in a way, then we got to become more aware of the triggers, and we got to become more aware of our own internal thoughts. So it's tier zero. It's ground zero for living the good life, is becoming a student and becoming aware of how you work. And I don't know another way through it. And
I
it's
love your
certainly open to.
distinction between, not distinction, but the addition of the word awareness there, because I think a lot more people, when they hear awareness, oh, that means I understand and I can see and I can feel. Mindfulness is kind of still obscure in a way. We know
Right.
what it
Yeah.
is. If I say the word mindfulness, now that we can hear that and then go to awareness, now we can become aware in the ways in which when I walk into a room and it's a party, that I'm very self-conscious and I'm worried about what people think about me, how I'm dressed, what I'm going to say. And so it becomes that awareness, and what triggers, you use the word trigger, what triggers me, and what puts me in a place where I don't feel like I'm being genuinely, authentically Jerry, who I am,
Yeah.
you know,
That's and we all have triggers, right?
yeah, right.
We you know, I don't know if you agree with this, Jerry, but like, I don't think we're getting through this world without, or this physical form of our lives without trauma, big T or little T. And so I've got plenty of little T's and I've got some big T's that, like, when the brain is supposed to like protect me from those things happening again. Um, and so that's why I tighten up. That's why I go into a protective mindset or psychological framework, is that when I'm walking into that holiday party with friends and family, but I was made fun of when I was younger for wearing the wrong thing, or like saying a joke that didn't land or whatever, that's why there's like in the holidays, as we're recording right now, there's pre-party anxiety, pre-holiday party anxiety that happens. It's like we're trying to protect ourselves. And if we're not aware of how we're responding and or what are the triggers that happen, I just think I don't know, it's a really tough way to go through life. And so awareness is just and mindfulness is such a radical, I've used that word a bunch in this conversation. It's a radical commitment to having a chance of knowing what you're capable of and having a chance of living the quote unquote good life. I think that it gives you the best chance for it.
Yeah, so this practice of meditation is a tool, so to speak, a skill set that helps you to become more aware. Can we agree on that, right?
Period. Yeah.
Right.
Period.
And so when we're meditating, and it's easy, it really is. It's simple, but when we're meditating, we kind of help our mind to establish a gap between like a stimulus and response. So I walk into that room, there's a lot of stimuli that I'm going to respond in a certain way.
Yeah.
But if I'm have a meditation practice, then my mind, what I'm doing is I'm going to the mind gym, and I'm developing these ideas and thoughts about how I can pause, like the great music is, once I heard this, it was wonderful, the pause between the notes.
That's right.
And so the pause between the stimulus and the response, and to be able to understand, that's awareness right there, isn't it?
That's it.
That's where you
exactly
become
it.
aware, right? And
That's exactly
but what I hear you saying, and others need to know this, it's not magic. You don't pop a pill and get it. You got to work at it. You got to practice it. It's got to be a priority, and feel how good life is when you're able to have a say in what happens to you day to day.
Yeah, and go back to like the protective mechanisms of the brain, which thank God goodness our ancestry gave it to us. Like they're very good. Is that we've got this idea or this concept of train of thought, and so if you get on thought number one, and that's like, okay, don't blow it, or what, they just squinted their eyes. Does that mean like whatever? So there's a train of thought, and that train of thought can be very fast. And it can take you right to to an emotionally bankrupt place. Sure. Where it could trigger a panic attack. It could trigger general anxiety or some anxiousness. It could trigger some stuff. Like a train of thought happens. And once you become aware that thought one, thought two, thought three are kind of on that same train, once you're more aware, you can get off that train. Like you can say, I know where this train's going. Hold on. And then kind of get into the gap and then get onto a new train. It just takes time. It takes time to practice it. And I love how you say there's no pill. And LSD and psychedelics are not training that bit. They might train some opening of new ideas, which is cool. But meditation is the practice of awareness, but it's the practice of refocusing 1,000 times within, 5 minutes. Refocus back to what's happening in this present moment. The content is less important than the actual refocusing to the task, whatever the task is. So I just love how complicated and wonderful the inner life is, and I think it's one of the great, beautiful sciences.
Yeah, I mean, and the thought throughout this whole conversation that keeps popping up into my head that I want people to take away, or to coaches to teach to their athletes, or parents to teach to their kids, is that this FOPO, fear, all these, they're normal. Like we normalize it. Like we spend our whole lives comparing how we feel on the inside to how everyone else looks on the outside. And that outside is, through social media, is so filtered. And realistically, we're all the same on the inside. We're all, as Jerry's analogy likes, right? We're like a duck, and above the water, it looks cool and calm, and below, we're paddling furiously. And I think that's what I think we take all these tools and teach people, and it's normal to have this, and just develop the tools and the ability to work through. So thank you.
No, thank you, mate. Thank you. And, I can feel that we're kind of wrapping up here. Is Jerry, I just want to say, like, I have loved your work, and I have given your book out. I think I shared this with you a while back, but I've given your book out more than just about any other book I've given out. And it's so applied. It's The Way of the Champion. It's so applied. It's so simple. It's so practical. It's so available for people. And you've really found that intersection between application and wisdom, and the simplicity of the way that you express your ideas. Maybe you faked it, but I don't believe so. That you really understand how these mechanisms work, and you're living them. And so I just want to say, like, yes, I hope you didn't get over on me, because I've been reading your stuff for a long time, going, yeah, oh, he's on it. Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. But I just want to say thank you.
What can I say? I mean, I'm in awe of your comment, and I never expected that. And I don't see myself as a genius or a scholar. I see myself as having observed life. I'm an observer. And when you're an observer and you keep it simple, you kind of see things that you normally wouldn't. We're looking for answers and complexities, and there are none. And life is not complex. It's simple, but we have to work at that. It takes work. And as you say, and we're I said to John before we got on here, now here I go with my comments about you, right? And by the way, guys, you're listening, we didn't plan this out at all.
No. Yeah,
it's very sincere, and I feel that love, and it means a lot to me. But I said to John, I said, there's a lot to unpack in this book. It's simply written, but the concepts it took me like sometimes a while to get through several pages and make note of them. And I did. I made note of all of them. And in many cases, they were clear reminders of what I need to remember. And you say it in a way that's different than the way I say it, because I'm tired of the way I'm saying it.
Isn't that yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah,
I'm tired of the way I'm saying it. When I listen to the way you say it, it's like, that's what I've been doing,
That's so fun. Yeah.
But anyway, I've been working at life for the time I've been born. I'm still working at it, and at my age, I feel as though I'm only halfway there, and that's not false humility. I just think that this is a long journey, and there's so much more for me, and I believe for all of us to learn. And it's people like you, Mike, that keep me going and keep myself thinking and challenging myself. And so what a pleasure to have you on here, and stimulating conversation. It's one that I think we have to revisit again, because we only touched a small part of what this book is all about.
You guys are awesome. Yeah. You guys are awesome. And John, thank you for pushing us parents to just be a little bit more aware, a little bit more kind, a little bit more connected to what the child is looking for. And again, like I mean that when I say it, echoing Jerry's point earlier, like we need your message proliferated in massive ways. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you, Mike. Again, this was awesome. Just want to give you the last word and tell how can people best connect with you, follow your work, any new projects, and obviously where can they get the book?
Okay, so Fun Way is the podcast, Finding Mastery. Just to kind of follow along with what we're doing. Website has a bunch of resources that we've kind of cobbled together for folks that are in business and or looking to be better individually. You can get the book anywhere the books are sold. I know it's cheap to say, local bookstore, but if you can, it's pretty cool if you can walk down the store and grab one and support them. But Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those places have it as well. So so those are the fun places.
Awesome, man. We'll give you the final word. Any parting thoughts for our audience here after this great discussion?
Okay. Thank you for that opportunity. There's so much more to go. There's so much more to grow. There's the factor of human potential is relatively untapped. And so we're just getting started from an evolutionary standpoint of what it means to be better as a society with all of the resources, external and internal resources we have available. We're not doing very well. We're not doing great. And we can make a massive difference in ourselves and with our loved ones and our friends and our coworkers by working from the inside out. And it does not take a lot of work. It's like 10 minutes a day, something along those, just to get started. And I'm incredibly bullish on the power of psychology and what we are capable of when we make those investments and work from the inside out. And so appreciate you guys. And, I'm wishing your community, to bear down, to work from the inside out, to hold the standard, and to do it in a loving way for other people as well. No one does it alone. We need each other. And so I need you guys, I need my loved ones to hold the standard for me and do it in a loving way, in a way that I can feel it. And I feel like human potential is not yet understood. We haven't even scratched the surface of it.
Brilliant. Michael Gervais, thank you so much for being on The Way Champions. Jerry, I don't even know how to start right now. That conversation was one of the favorites that I have had in a long time. I had high expectations for this podcast, and it exceeded them all.
Yeah. I knew it would be like this. He's amazing in what he's doing and how he's thinking. He's at the forefront of a lot of what people are trying to do. And of course, you and I are there, and that's why he appreciates us so much. And he really resonates with a lot that we're doing. So we have a lot in common, but he's got an amazing way of presenting things and responding to ideas and concepts and thoughts. Just when he picked up, the one thing that I take away many things, but that idea, it's good for me to remember this. I know the definition of mindfulness. I mean, any book that you read will say mindfulness is awareness, blah, blah, blah. But I personally keep going back to the word mindfulness because that's really what it is. But what we got to remember is that it's so much easier for people when you talk to them and say, you know what, you might want to become more aware of that. And here's a way you could become more aware of that more often. And when you do, you're going to have a say in the outcome. And that's what he was talking about. And I'm so glad he picked up on that. I've done it slightly in the past, but I use the word mindfulness, I think, a little bit too much. And of course, I wrote a book called The Mindful Coach. It probably would sell better by calling it that, but really what I'm talking about is coach awareness, self-awareness. That's what we need. Once you're self-aware, the feeling, the opinions of others won't matter nearly as much because you'll know who you are. The reason why you're worried about other people's opinion is we don't know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to know that we're okay no matter who we are. But if you really know who you are and you start to love who you are, then what happens is then that diminishes that fear of other people's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen. So much. I mean, for me, this idea that performance is meant to be an expression of who we are, not the definition of who we are.
That's a brilliant
And
comment.
and I think we live in this world where through youth sports, through high school sports, for so many young athletes, whether it's the the public thing or just what comes from our family or our coaches, and it's praise only for performance, and when we do it well, it's so easy
Yeah.
to be defined by a performance-based identity and not a purpose-based. And as we talked about there, I feel like that is my life, and I feel like for so many people and so many young athletes, that's what it is. And one of the greatest gifts I think we can give as a parent or as a coach is to help people shift that, because as Maureen Monty told us a couple weeks ago, right? You're not in control of whether other people like you or what they think of you.
Mm-hmm.
So shift to purpose, because that belongs to you.
But you can control that. You can control your purpose and your meaning, and you can control who you are.
Yeah.
Who you really are, not who you want to be, but who you are. And to know that who you are is very unique and very special. There's no one else in the entire world that is you, John. Nobody.
Yeah.
And the specialness of you, when I start thinking about all the people that I relate to, there's nobody like them. There's nobody like me. There's nobody like you. There's nobody like Mike Gervais, and so we're all in this together, and we're all trying to identify who we are. And it's a great question. I ask it every year. Who am I? And then I dive down deeper for that. And it always comes back to my why I'm doing things, and being authentic and genuine. And so I think this is a groundbreaking. The fact is that the whole book is about the feeling fear about other people's opinion, and then he goes into the details of the psychology all through it. But I think, raise your hand if you don't have a fear of other people's opinion at some point in the day.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, the book, The First Rule of Mastery, Mike Gervais, his podcast is called Finding Mastery, one of my favorites, not just for the athletes and the coaches he brings on, but the high performers in so many other arenas as well. What a great conversation. You can get the book wherever books are sold, and you can listen to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you to all of you for listening, and hopefully this is one that you're going to share and help us grow our audience. And share this message, because I thought this was a really important one. And that's the way you can use your influence this week, right? To use it for good, because it's not neutral. So go out there, share this podcast, share these ideas, buy this book, buy it for someone that you care about, because they will be very grateful for it. And we'll see you again next week.